They told the church we'd reconciled. I wasn't even invited. For 15 years, I set the table, paid for the food, smiled through the tension, and this year, they erased me while using my name to prove how healed they were. My name is Amira Collins. I'm 39, a magazine editor, a homeowner, a reasonably decent cook, and apparently still the family embarrassment. Last Thanksgiving, I stood at the edge of the Cross family's dining room like I always did, half guest, half servant. My parents, Eleanor and Gerald Collins, were in full host mode. My sister Caroline was glowing over her second engagement, and my brother Ryan kept giving speeches like he was at a political fundraiser. Me? I made sure the wine didn't run out and no one burned the cranberry sauce. That's how it's always been. Not asked, just assumed. I was the eldest, the responsible one, which in our family is code for do all the invisible work and don't make a scene. So this year, like clockwork, I prepaid the Thanksgiving catering, $4,385.60 to be exact. I covered everything. Roast turkey, vegetarian options for Caroline's fiancé of the month, and yes, even the organic, nut-free pumpkin pies. Then a week before Thanksgiving, my cousin Mariah texted me, "Hey, are you coming this year? I thought you were part of the reunion program thing." Wait, what? I scrolled up through the family group chat and noticed something strange. Everyone was chatting logistics, but no one had tagged me. No one had even responded to my RSVP, so I called my mom. "Mom, just checking. Should I bring anything?" I asked, trying to sound casual. There was a pause. Then she exhaled sharply. "Amira, let's not make this complicated. We're keeping it small this year, just the core family." I blinked. "I am core family." Another pause. Then came the soft, practiced voice she used when guilt-tripping people at church luncheons. "We just didn't want tension, sweetheart. Let's not relive old disagreements, okay?" Right. The same people who never had a problem letting me pay for everything had suddenly decided my presence was disruptive. I didn't argue. I just smiled to myself and whispered, "So I paid for a party I wasn't even invited to?" That was when the switch flipped. And if they thought I was just going to swallow it again like always, they were about to find out what happens when the invisible daughter decides to show up. The thing about being the dependable one is people forget you have limits. Or maybe they just assume you won't say anything when they cross them. I didn't explode when my mom called me too opinionated for family dinners. I didn't push back when Dad made a joke about how I didn't really get the whole marriage thing. I didn't even flinch when my sister Caroline sent me a wedding invite with no +1 after I paid for half her dress. So no, this wasn't the first time I'd been made to feel like an outsider in my own family. But this, being erased after footing the bill, that hit different. 3 days before Thanksgiving, I stood in my kitchen, still in my work blouse, staring at the email Mariah forwarded me. The Cross family invites you to a special Thanksgiving celebration focused on healing and family restoration, proudly supported by the Charleston Faith Alliance. My eyes stopped at one line. "We are especially honored to welcome back Amira Collins, eldest daughter, as part of this reunion." I laughed out loud. They used my name. They accepted grant money, church funding, for a healing reunion that I wasn't even invited to. They cashed in on my pain while pretending I was in the room. Let that sink in for a moment. Not only had I paid for the meal, but I'd apparently become the emotional token they paraded around for community brownie points. Without my knowledge, without my consent. Tell me, have you ever had someone use your story to make themselves look good while pushing you completely out of the frame? It's not just betrayal, it's performance-level manipulation. And it works because people love a redemption arc. They want to believe families reconcile, that wounds magically heal, that the daughter came home. But I hadn't come home. I was standing there in my one-bedroom apartment in South Charleston, watching the family that pushed me out get praise for taking me back. That night, I lay awake for hours. Not crying, just stunned. I remembered every PTA meeting I filled in for Caroline, every time I wired money to Ryan after his 4th startup failed, every time Mom called and opened with, "I know it's a lot to ask, but you're the only one we can trust." Trust. The word rattled around in my brain until it felt like a joke. So I opened my laptop, pulled up the catering invoices, and I started dialing numbers. Slowly, calmly. "Hi, this is Amira Collins. I'd like to cancel my order for November 23rd. Let them serve cold air for dinner. Let them taste what they'd been feeding me for years. And if you've ever felt like your silence was weaponized against you, yeah, I see you. Thanksgiving morning was clear, cold, and quiet. The kind of day that usually smells like cinnamon, gravy, and forced smiles. Instead, my apartment smelled like cider and peace. I'd lit a candle, took my time making tea, wore the soft sweater my cousin Riley once said made me look too serious. And then I waited. Not for food, not for forgiveness, just for the unraveling. At exactly 12:14 p.m., my phone buzzed. Dad. I let it ring. Once, twice, 3 times. Then I picked up, calm as anything. The food never came, he said. No greeting, just that. His voice was frayed, like someone who was used to control and suddenly found none. I sipped my tea. That's odd, I replied. Maybe check with whoever placed the order. A beat. A pause sharp enough to cut through the phone. You placed the order, Amira. Did I? I said lightly, letting the silence settle. Huh. I guess I assumed you didn't need anything from me. And just like that, I hung up. Not in anger, not with triumph, just done. Somewhere in their polished dining room, I imagined 20 plates sitting in front of 20 hungry people, none of them knowing what to say. Mom pacing the kitchen, checking the oven for dishes that never existed. Caroline whispering, wondering who forgot what. Uncle James making awkward jokes. And my dad, still holding the phone, trying to piece together how the daughter he ignored suddenly held all the power. And I didn't even raise my voice. Have you ever had a moment like that? When you didn't yell, didn't plead, you just stopped showing up the way they expected. And it flipped everything upside down. It wasn't revenge, it was a boundary. With teeth. An hour later, Riley texted, "What happened? No food, no pies, your mom's freaking out." I texted back one word, noted. Later that night, I sat under the string lights in my tiny apartment, flipping through a book I'd already read twice. My phone buzzed again, this time from an unknown number. It was a forwarded screenshot, a Facebook post from my mother. Thanksgiving didn't go as planned, but family is what matters most. We love you, Amira. The caption was wrapped in fake warmth, all for show. She still hadn't called me, so I didn't respond. Because silence is only painful when you expect it to be filled. And they were the ones who taught me how to live without being heard. They called it a healing Thanksgiving. That's what the flyer said, the one I found crumpled in a forwarded email from someone at the church. The Cross family invites you to a community-centered meal focused on reconciliation and forgiveness, supported by the Charleston Faith Alliance. Special guest, Amira Collins, reuniting with family after years apart. I stared at it for a long time. There was a photo, one of those overly bright stock images of a happy family holding hands around a table, and my name, bold, centered, like I had RSVP'd to a redemption arc I didn't even know existed. No one called to ask me, no one asked permission, but they sure were happy to use me. Turns out my parents, Eleanor and Gerald, had signed up for a faith rebuilding grant, something the church offered to families in crisis. The catch, they had to host a public reconciliation dinner, with a narrative, a clean story, something about wounds being healed and people coming home. So they wrote me into the script. They didn't tell the organizers that I hadn't spoken to them in months, or that they'd uninvited me, or that I was sitting alone in my apartment while they cashed in on the idea of loving me. Have you ever been erased in person, then reinserted in fiction? It's surreal. I didn't scream, I didn't post, I didn't even call. I printed the flyer, the grant application, and the group chat where Mom said, "No need to loop Amira in, less drama." Then I walked into St. Helena's Hall on Christmas Eve. Not in rage, just resolved. The hall was packed. Church folks, neighbors, people who'd come for the potluck, and the hope. The pastor stood at the mic, saying something about healing. When he introduced the Cross family, Mom stood proudly. Dad nodded like he'd just returned from war. Then came the line that broke the mask. "And we're especially moved to welcome back their daughter Amira, who's here today." All heads turned, except I wasn't at their table. I was already walking to the front. I took the mic. Hi, I'm Amira Collins, and I just want to clarify. I wasn't invited to Thanksgiving. I didn't reunite with anyone. In fact, I found out about this event after it happened, so whatever story you've been told wasn't mine. Silence. No gasps, just stillness, the kind that follows a truth no one can spin. I handed the mic back, smiled politely, and walked out through the same doors they once quietly closed behind me. Except this time, I was the one who chose to leave. 3 days after Christmas, I started getting messages, some polite. Hey, just checking in. You doing okay? Heard there was a misunderstanding? Some not. Wow, didn't expect that kind of performance from you. Hope it was worth it. And some from people I hadn't heard from in years. Heard you called out your whole family in church. Bold. That's when I knew the spin had begun. My mother moved fast, always did when control slipped from her hands. Within 48 hours, she'd recast the narrative. Amira wasn't the daughter who spoke truth. She was emotionally unstable, dramatic, jealous of the attention on Caroline's engagement. Apparently, I had a history of these outbursts. Interesting, considering silence had always been my crime. I didn't respond. Not to the texts, not to the comments, not even when one of the church volunteers emailed me an apology that read more like a PR statement. But it still hurt. Have you ever told the truth so clearly and still been made the villain? It's disorienting. It makes you question everything. And then you realize that's the point. That's always been the point. If they can discredit you, they don't have to deal with what you said. If you're fragile, then your story is fiction. Luckily, I had receipts. I didn't post them. I didn't go on some digital crusade. But when my cousin Riley texted, asking what really happened, I sent her 3 screenshots. The grant application listing my name. The group chat where they said not to invite me. The catering receipt in my name. 10 minutes later, she called, crying. I didn't know, Amira. I'm so sorry. I thought they said. I let her speak. I didn't need an apology. I needed someone to see it. And she did. Later that night, my brother Ryan sent a single message. I should have spoken up. You didn't deserve that. It wasn't a fix, but it mattered. Truth doesn't always win the loudest. Sometimes it sits quietly in your corner, waiting. Waiting until someone who used to look away finally looks back. So I didn't fight back online. I didn't defend every lie. Instead, I wrote one message in the family group chat. Simple, undeniable. No breakdowns, no drama, just clarity. Hope you're all well. I'm doing fine. And that was enough. Sometimes peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's refusing to shrink just because someone else is afraid of your full height. And if you've ever had your story rewritten to protect someone else's comfort, I want you to know you're not the liar here. 2 weeks into the new year, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity has a way of slipping past boundaries you thought were ironclad. It's Mom, the voice said, clipped, cold. We need to talk. In person. Your little stunt humiliated me. There it was. Not, you hurt me. Not, let's talk about what happened. Just, you humiliated me. Still about appearances, still about control. She gave a time, a place, then hung up. And you know what? I went. Not to fix anything, but because Aunt Margaret, one of the few who stayed neutral, called and said, you don't have to forgive them, but make them say it to your face. So I went. Sunday dinner, same dining room, same chandelier, same spotless white tablecloths. Except this time, I didn't sit down. Mom was already at the head of the table, arms folded like a judge. Dad stood beside her, tight-lipped. Caroline scrolled her phone. Ryan wouldn't meet my eyes. Mom started. Do you even understand what you've done? I tilted my head. Which part are you mad about? Canceling the food, showing up at church, or the fact that no one believed your version of the story anymore? Her face flushed. Dad jumped in, voice low. Your mother's hurt, Amira. You didn't have to make it public. She made it public, I said. She applied for money under my name, told people we reconciled. That wasn't just a lie, it was a choice. And then Mom snapped. You're so dramatic, always have been. You abandoned your family over a simple misunderstanding. I looked at her, steady. You didn't invite me. You took my money. You erased me. Then you used me. Silence. Ryan looked up finally. She's right. Everyone turned. You told people she was coming. You let her pay for it. And then when it blew up, you made her the villain. My mom's eyes flashed. Don't you start to... No. He cut her off. You crossed a line. For the first time, I saw my father's posture crumble, not because I raised my voice, but because I didn't need to. I stood up. I'm done. Not angry, just done. No one chased me. No one called after. No hugs, no tears, no apologies that felt like anything more than damage control. And yet, I felt lighter. Back in my apartment, I lit a candle, sat with my journal, let silence settle. Not the kind that suffocates, but the kind that soothes. If you've ever walked away from a family table that made you feel small, I hope you know the absence of love isn't your failure. It's just your cue to build your own. And if this story feels like yours, leave a comment. I'm listening.